Hey, it's Mike Brennan. We're back. Matt had to step out to deal with another event that he's working today. And so I'll go one on one with my friend here, epidemiologist Fred Brown, and who's been with us now for about a year, actually. And we've been trying to keep everybody up to date on all the latest news with COVID-19. And now with the good news that the vaccines are being distributed. And as I just mentioned to Kathleen before we started, I finally got mine scheduled. I'm going to do it at the EMU Convocation Center on the 19th, on Friday. And so that's the Pfizer vaccine. And then I go back on April 9th to get my second shot. And then hopefully we'll be okay. Right, Fred?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right. On an individual basis, you'll be a lot more protected. There's no doubt about it. Once you get the vaccines, they are super protective, really safe, and great technology.
So, but even we talked about this last week, but I wanted to bring it up again. Even after you get vaccinated, does not mean then that you can pack yourself into a bar without a mask or anything like that, right? There's still a lot of precautions that need to be taken.
Yeah, actually, the challenge we have is that the vaccines are intermuscular, and so those go into your muscles, and they give you a nice sense of immunity inside your body. The problem is the virus actually attacks your nasal mucosa, which is a different part of your body and isn't part of the real, isn't part of the natural, it has a slightly different immune response than what happens inside the rest of your body. And so what we're not sure about is whether or not your body is safe, but you're still at risk of getting infected because your mucosal membranes aren't protected, or that you can transfer it to other people. And especially if you are at risk, that means older, having comorbid disease, um, or other risk factors. Um, that you really could transfer even if you the virus, even if you have been vaccinated. And so until we get a lot more safe, I think I showed you my little diagram of what my epidemiologist friends said, what they would feel comfortable doing, what they wouldn't feel comfortable doing. If I haven't done that, maybe I should do that next week. But I can
Okay.
do that. I kind of surveyed 100 epidemiologists of friends of mine and said, what activities would you feel comfortable with, and under what circumstances, and every one of them said, going to a bar not till we reach herd immunity. That means a combination of vaccination plus infection rates have to be over, at this rate, probably over 80% of the population.
Hmm.
And that's a big hurdle to go to a bar. That's the same for a big sporting event. But on the other hand, if you're just talking about getting together with another friend who's also been vaccinated, absolutely don't go with more than two friends though who have been vaccinated.
Well, President Biden, last week said that he was hoping by the 4th of July you could have a small, intimate 4th of July party. He didn't get into a high level of detail. What does that mean? 4 or 5 people, everybody wearing masks, or what?
So there are a couple of things that matter. Number one, it's how many from different families are getting together. So if you're talking about your own pod and you're vaccinated and everyone else isn't vaccinated, and you're used and it's a group you're getting together with all the time and who are being relatively safe, then yeah, you can have that party. If you're talking about another family, and again, with everyone having been vaccinated at this point, I think by July 4th, I think by July 14th, everyone will be vaccinated. I'm not sure about July 4th. So if you're at that stage where everyone's vaccinated or who's at risk, certainly, and it's two families getting together, then that's fine, even if they don't commingle. The issues are if it's still in a closed area, so be outside on a barbecue, not inside. Instead of barbecue, not in the indoor party with 60 people, and that's really important. So it's still the same risk factors, right? Are you commingling with lots of crowds in a real tight area, sharing air, and how many people are at risk? And if those two things are high, then you don't want to do it, even if you've been vaccinated. You want to continue to wear a mask. You want to avoid those situations. So when you're commingling with lots of people, commingling in the air with lots of people, and a lot of these people, and you or a lot of the people in the audience and in your group are at risk, don't do it.
Well, there's a couple of events coming up that I've been debating on whether I should even participate in. Through what I do with my other project, Michigan Marijuana Report, I've been invited to a golf outing at the end of May, which would be outdoors,
Excellent.
and then a beach party at the end of June on Lake Michigan, which of course would be outdoors. And what do you think?
Bring your own food and go. Have a great time, but stay, but still maintain precautions, right? Golfing is relatively safe. On the beach is relatively safe. We really haven't been able to trace anything, directly back to those events officially. So we have been watching those things pretty carefully, and golfing seems safe, and so does going to a beach where there's lots of air circulation. I wouldn't stand in big lines though, waiting for barbecue to be served.
And then
You
also,
know,
I don't know if it's true or whether it's just an urban legend, something about ultraviolet light. Our little COVID friends don't like ultraviolet
oh, they
light.
don't like it. That's right. It disrupts them completely. UV light is great. Sunlight is good, generally, because it also all that fresh air, a little bit of exercise really stimulates your immune system. It's all good.
Okay.
D3, vitamin D3. So speaking of that, I wanted to go back, if it makes sense, because people, typically you have these clinical tests and trials, and then you never hear anything back, and everyone's starting to get vaccinated. So what happened was the FDA, in order to approve Johnson and Johnson's vaccine on February 13th, as I recall, they actually went back and said, how safe have our vaccines been to date? And so they actually, so do we have a systematic problem with the way we're approving these vaccines? If so, we should reflect this in the new J&J vaccine. But if we've been safe with Moderna and Pfizer with our last review, then things should be good. And so if you like, I can share my screen a little bit and
Sure.
show you what they said, which I think is kind of heartening. Uh, um, so let's see here. I need to go to a different size of slides. Let me guess. So let me go do that. Here we are. And we'll start.
Lots of slides.
Well, we won't show them all today. We'll save a few just in case you've got extra questions. Then here we are on the 15th. I'm ahead of myself. But anyway,
The Ides of March today, Fred.
that's
So,
right. That's right. So what we have in our database is we've got two big databases. One is called VAERS, and VAERS is a database that actually you're required to fill in. So when you go to a clinical trial, they say, would you mind going on as a special subset of our collection data set? And if you agree, then we're going to go and actively collect lots of data from you, and you're part of our trial. And they're doing that with follow-up trial with probably about, among the three groups that have been tested, they're probably doing that with almost 20,000 patients,
hmm.
where these people will be monitored for 6 months, 12 months, and then 2 years to see whether or not they have continued immunity, whether they have any troubles. And then we've got something that you can sign up for just as anybody who said, and that's called the VSafe database. So that's something you don't have to participate in the trial, but you just say, hey, I've just participated. I've just taken my vaccine. Everything's good, or I have the swelling, or I've got this, or I have that. So that's a voluntary piece. So the problem that the challenge with VSafe is that it is voluntary, and so you are going to get some selection bias. Not everybody wants to sign up for this, but you can see that it's a pretty good sized data set, right? So this is the number of people at the time that were reported. And one of the things I was interested in, one of the things I always get requests about is, gosh, we want to become pregnant. Is it safe? Should I take the vaccine or not? And the answer is yes. Take the vaccine, because it's more dangerous to you and your fetus not to be vaccinated and catch COVID than it is for you to take this vaccine by far. And I'll show you some of that data. But we want to look at some of the broader data as well. So you can see of the 55 million people who are taking the vaccine, and by now, by the way, on a worldwide basis, over 200 million have taken the vaccine. So that's a lot of people. We got a lot of data sets, and so far, no big safety issues, and very good immunity and efficacy results. And you can see that now, of the 55 million people in the United States, 4 million or so at the time this was happening in February 16th, exactly a month ago, signed up and said, yeah, I want to participate. And you can see almost 10%. I'm sorry, not quite. 1%, which is typical pregnancy rate for the United States, said, I'm also pregnant. So that's sort of what happened. And you can see that of those, That's just people who were reporting in. Of those, they actually registered. So you can decide, okay, I'm just going to report myself and say, yep, I'm in this, these are my conditions. You can also register yourself in order to be able to actually report. So they had 1,800 people registering of this. And in that time of the 1,800, there are 275 completed pregnancies and 232 live births, which is great. I mean, it's actually higher rate of live births than we would actually anticipate with people not taking the vaccine, interestingly enough. So this is what the next big area is anaphylaxis. Anaphylaxis is, and you can see that we finally got to parts per million, and we can now kind of say with some certainty that you know, if you're kind of that 1 in a million person who has special anaphylaxis, if you're taking the Pfizer or Moderna shots, the reason they have a slightly higher anaphylaxis rate is because they use a lot of polyethylene glycol. It turns out that that does is something that people are allergic to at a little bit higher rate than J&J's vaccine. So you can see it's about 2 to 4 times higher, but it's still at a you know, parts per million level for 2.54, and then versus one, slightly less than one person in a million is going to have an anaphylactic shock. And by the way, no one's died of the anaphylaxis. Everyone's had their EpiPen with them. Everyone's gone ahead and taken the, you know, if they've had an adverse reaction, everyone's ready to go. That's why you wait that 15 minutes after you take that first shot.
Ah,
Sometimes, and people with a history should wait 45 minutes. So just to make sure you're not going into a situation. Now, we also kind of register all the other bad things that can happen to you. And you can see what we look at, what we're interested in is that last two columns. We're interested in, okay, what is the problem? That's the, you know, do you have encephalomyelitis? Are you going to get myocardial infarction? Are you going to have respiratory distress syndrome? Those are very serious responses to, you know, and very serious adverse events to a vaccine. And you can see in the on the far right, what happens is, and this is how long they monitored this for, which is how much when you'd expect to see some kind of response, you know, from a vaccine. You can see the events in vaccinated versus the risk versus the events that people are expecting. Right, that's the second to the last on the right and the right. And so, if you had this many people taking the vaccine, you would expect in the general population 26.0 myocardial infarctions. Whether you've taken a vaccine or not, you would have expected 26, and the actual events in the vaccinated is 23.
hmm.
So you can see that from that, there's no excess that's occurring. And that's true in the entire column. And so that's that's what's nice about that is it's in the expected, statistically expected levels that you would have expected anyway, whether you've gotten the vaccine or not. If you got the vaccine, you're at the same risk level as people in general public. And so great news after, you know, now 55 million shots. So we're now instead of you know 75,000. Well, actually, we actually tested in these two groups probably 20,000 plus 15,000, so 35,000. So you know 20 times now that we've got, you know, 200 times more data. The answer is it's holding, which is
Hmm.
great. And now here is the pregnancy, and you can see here are all the pregnancy outcomes that you would expect in the background rate. That's the background rate. That's how much you'd expect right in the middle column. And then the far column, you see how many actually occurred. And you can see in every case, we're right in that range of what we'd expect normally anyway, whether you were vaccinated or not vaccinated. So great news. If you're and the great news is it really protects you significantly if you from not getting a bad disease and sadly, you know, possibly dying yourself or killing your fetus or causing great harm to the fetus in some way. When you don't have enough oxygenation, that's very difficult for the baby to survive, for a developing fetus to survive normally with that situation if you're severely oxygen compromised as a pregnant woman. And that's what happens, sadly, with severe COVID. So you want to avoid that situation at all costs. This helps you avoid it, and you're not causing any additional risk to yourself. So, and I say this because there have been instances where people have decided to wait. They said, you know, I'm not really sure about this vaccine. I want to go ahead and let's wait for a slightly better one. And so here's what happens on a population basis. That's on the individual level, right? If you're pregnant, go ahead and take a shot. But here is what happens on a national level. And Germany decided that the AstraZeneca vaccine wasn't very good. And they did really, they said, you know, we want to wait till the Pfizer vaccine comes through because they were a little bit proud nationally that Pfizer BioNTech was their vaccine. The UK was the AstraZeneca vaccine. They had a chance to approve and start vaccinating everybody at the same time the UK did. The UK was slightly ahead of us in terms of approval. They were about 3 weeks ahead of us on first approvals. Germany decided to wait to approve it till after we actually approved our vaccine. And the problem was they also told everyone, and it's not very good. And so no one really wanted to sign up for it. So you can see what happened was they were ready in Germany to vaccinate at the same level the UK was, but they only got about 8% of people to so far vaccinate today, whereas 6 to 8% actually. In the UK, we're at 35% vaccination levels. Now, what that meant was, what Germany said was, if we go, if we don't vaccinate, basically, and wait, we're trying to get slightly better. And you can see how much slightly better that would be. What we know is that if you have one of these vaccines, right now, nobody who's been vaccinated has died of COVID. Nobody who's been vaccinated has gone to the hospital with COVID. So there have been kind of a few hundred severe cases that have gone through even despite being vaccinated. So those do occur. So if you do all the math, if they had gone ahead and vaccinated with AstraZeneca, they could have had between 0 and 7,200 deaths. If they waited for Pfizer and Moderna, they could have between 0 and 2,000 deaths. But when waiting for that extra 4% benefit of waiting for a Pfizer shot, possible benefit and possibly 0 benefit, they actually exposed themselves to 50 extra days of people dying at 200 people per day. So they said, we'll wait 50 days. And meanwhile, they're having 200 people dying a day. That's easy math, right? That's 10,000 people dying, and you're hoping they're going to save an extra 40. That's it. So that's what happens when you don't really do the math and figure it out. So what happens? I've had probably 50 people come to me and say, Fred, I have a chance. I could take the J&J vaccine, or I could wait for 3 weeks and take the Pfizer vaccine. And every time, even when the person is 18 years old, perfectly fit, has no conditions, the answer is take the vaccine now. Don't wait for that extra 3 or 4%, and no change in actually death rates. So they're, basically Germany sweated a 4% improvement opportunity while they had, while the house was burning down. Don't do that. That's what we got right now. We got the house burning down. We got lots of deaths out there. Lots of, we got 70,000 new cases a day in the United States. So don't take that chance. Now here's what happened overall. You can see the problem was not only did Germany actually cause their death rates to go way up and the new infections to go right. I mean, look at that curve, straight up, even much higher than ours did, because they also have the B117 variant. And I told you the B117 variant last time. It is 50% more contagious, so you get transmission at 50% more rate, and it's 20% more deadly. So you don't want to, and right now we think that B117 is going to become the dominant variant in the United States between now and May. So what happened last time was what happens when that happens, and our best chance for not allowing that to happen is to avoid to prevent the virus from actually replicating. So you want to be able to stop its reproduction rate, and they do that with masking. Right now, we don't have enough people who are vaccinated to do that with vaccines, and we don't know actually if the vaccines stop transmission. We do know, though, that if you have a physical barrier in front of your face, you're not going to breathe on people, you're going to stop transmission that way. And with an N95 mask, it's 99.9% effective in stopping transmission if you've got it properly fitted. And even with a cloth mask, it's 40% effective. And if you double it up and tie it down right, it's up to 60% effective. So that's what we really want to keep doing. Even though we're starting to vaccinate at a faster rate than Germany. Otherwise, we're going to have that big peak when the B117 variant comes through, because what you're doing in the past with old technology isn't going to be enough to stop B117, and that's what they didn't understand. So look at how much different when you're on the yellow and chart is is the EU, and that's the new variant they have, and we're on the old variant on the US. We're not quite as good as Europe is with protection. Despite that, Europe, you can see that slope just going straight up. versus the United States, where it's a little bit softer. And if we don't, if we're starting to have challenges with B117, you can bet that we're going to go straight back up again. So the idea is try to avoid getting infected, try to avoid allowing the virus to keep replicating, because the more it replicates, the more it has a chance to mutate, and the more it mutates, the more it has a chance to become dangerous, like the B117 variant, which is now in the United States. And the problem with that is that, remember before I said, 75% of people should be either vaccinated or have had the virus, and then we're going to be protected. And um, uh, unfortunately, because the B117 virus is that much more transmittable, now our herd immunity target is 85%, not 75%, because it's going to become the dominant piece. So by waiting and letting this get really intercalated into our private lives, we're letting this new variant come in. We're going to actually have to have more vaccines and more barriers and longer time to improve. So that's the problem. And you can see that right now, luckily, a lot more people are getting positive about taking the vaccine, which is super. But of course, we have to go from 75 now to 85%. And right now, my guess is that even though we have a 24% improvement in overall people willingness to take the vaccine, that means we're probably at about 77% or so that we're going to get with natural immunity. In the past, that would have been just enough to get us over on average, but today it's not going to be enough. We have to do more, which means we need to have, more push on the vaccine, faster access to, and hopefully we can give people more venues, right? If you've taken the vaccine, you can get together with other vaccinated people. If you have taken the vaccine, you can come to our special party. If you come to if you take the vaccine, you can go on our flight on a long haul and to a nice place. Or you can go to your job without having to be tested all the time, or go to school without constantly being tested or wearing a mask. Those are the sort of things that we need to do to kind of push the vaccine so that we can now achieve the even higher targets we have to achieve herd immunity. And
Let
of
me
course,
ask you real
yeah,
quick. Are people going to be carrying a vaccination card? Is there going to be an app for your smartphone? Because you're going to have to verify to get on a plane or do other things that you've been vaccinated. How are they going to handle that?
I think so. We are looking at that very carefully. A lot of so, for example, Israel has the green pass. The EU have different carte de santé and other smart cards that indicate whether you've been vaccinated. India has a vaccination card as well. It's automatic. It's a beautiful information technology we install for India that really is going to help them a lot. I think in the United States, there's going to be a lot of resistance for privacy reasons to have passports.
Hmm.
But I think if you want to attend and do certain things and to get access to certain things, particularly, for example, countries, they're going to say, "Well, we love your independence, but we're pretty safe here. And if you want to come to Taiwan, you're going to have to show us you've been vaccinated." And that's typical today. I mean, you look at the special. I don't know if you ever on the special yellow card that you see for vaccination. They have an
Right.
international vaccination piece, and they're not very complicated. And if you're going to an area that has had trouble, for example, with yellow fever, or coming from an area with yellow fever or malaria, you'll get a little stamp, and then they'll expect you to have a vaccine or have done taking countermeasures before you enter the country. So it'll take a little more planning. So the answer is I don't think it's going to be required in the United States, but I do think that other countries are going to require it. And for people who are traveling a lot, you'll have to have a card. Right now, that's my guess. If we continue to have trouble with variants, I think it may get quite complicated, and the U.S. at that point may require it to indicate what vaccine you're up to date with and which variants you're sheltered from. Because if it gets more complicated than it is right now, where we have a pretty good vaccine for everything that we're really fighting against, that's one scenario. But if it turns out that you're not any good with the vaccine you've taken isn't any good for South America, and you're going to South America, at that point you probably want to get vaccinated. You want to know that and have a record of it. So I
Well,
think
even to go to Europe, I think even if you're out vaccinated, don't they still require a quarantine once you land or
yeah,
not?
yeah, many absolutely many countries are still requiring that because they're concerned that you can still be a carrier. Once you know more about transmission, then if the transmission rates are also reduced by, we think, up to 70 to 80%. at that point, I think some of those standards will relax. But right now, absolutely right. Quarantining is required for most countries.
Huh. Can you imagine that? You fly to Europe and you got to sit in a hotel for 14 days before you go out.
Fly back again. Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't think that sounds like fun to me, you know? So,
Yeah, no, that's right. And sometimes they're down to 10 days now for some, but 14 days is a long time to sit in a hotel. It's expensive. So here's the message, the problem that we're having, right? A number of our states are starting to open up. And because we're sort of antsy, it's going to be nice weather. The South especially wants to. It's perfect weather right now, and it's going to get too hot in the summer, so they want to, kind of make hay and have fun while the while the sun is shining. And you can see here all the different states. And I actually consulted several of these states who are pursuing different strategies. Some are pausing reopening, like Washington State is and Wisconsin is. Others are going full tilt and completely opening up. You can see Iowa, Montana, Florida, Texas, and then others are lifting restrictions slowly and easing them up. And what was funny was that there is a lot of polarity in this, and the problem is that we have a lot of conflicting signals. And that's because we're actually in a transition period. We're transitioning from a point where we're very susceptible, lots of COVID outbreaks, to one where we think we have better control. And so the question is, when should we go ahead and open up? And of course, I'm not sure we're ready for this, but this is what's going to happen in Daytona Beach on spring break, right?
oh, I think it's happening
So
right now, in
it's
fact.
happening
So,
right now, right? So the question is this smart? And the
no,
answer is no.
don't see a mask anywhere, right?
Oh, having a grand time. We're in a transition period. I think we're getting an advantage against the virus. You don't want to let the virus come back, but with its biggest tool, which is fast replication. And so, you know, when I see these kind of data sets and I don't know the answer, I tend to say, let's behave like we're not sure, and therefore we don't want to go out and go out on the thin ice and jump up and down or play hockey. We want to kind of take our time and make sure that the ice is thick enough for us to support the team. The challenge is that some governments, some states, are treating it as, if we don't know, let's see what happens. And I'm more on the side of, if we don't know, let's wait. Let's wait a little bit longer. And here's what happens. So Texas, as you know, they decided to open up, and you can see that we actually did some scenarios, and this is what happens in Texas if you open up too soon. If you open up completely April 15th, and of course they actually did earlier than this, you can see the level of hospitalizations are kind of 200 in the 200,000 level. If you wait until June 1st, meanwhile, you've actually decreased that number by 300%. So if you just by waiting by waiting 6 weeks, suddenly, because you're on an exponential curve and you've avoided having B117 hit you, you really reduce the amount of trouble that you're going to have. And if you are willing to wait till August 1st, then you really are going to really control this thing. And so for the vast majority of states who are recommending don't open up too fast, this is what happens when we do this. We've done this for Virginia, we've done this for Georgia, we've done this for New York. All these states are asking, what happens? And the answer is, it does tend to look like this. And you can see that even if you wait the 15, even if you wait for 6 weeks, you're still going to have a little bump to have to worry about and control. And the question is whether you want to have no bump at all, or whether you want to have go through that bump of about an extra 40,000 deaths in the case of Texas, which is 3 times our size. So Texas has 29 million people. We've got 10 million people. So you can just do the math backwards. They've got a slightly higher. We look at a whole number of factors here. We've got a little bit better. Michigan, the state of Michigan, has a little bit better chance because of delay, because of the seasonality. But Texas, on the other hand, has slightly higher starting points in terms of positivity rates and so on. So and therefore maybe slightly more immune because they've had more infection than we have in some of the rural areas. So in other words, this is about what's going to happen. And when the problem is, if you start to look at this, here's what happened in it looks sort of like a weird. It looks like a very weird pattern, doesn't it? That whoop, and then comes down back, and we don't really see that normally. So here's what we saw in Europe, and here's what we're predicting in Texas. And the problem is Europe is about 17, 18 Texas, and so if you start to put them
Hmm.
all together, and you put 17 Texas together, it's pretty easy to get a pattern that are each slightly offset. Going into mobility and out of mobility and having more infection rates and less infection rates over time. It's pretty easy to generate a pattern that is very, very consistent with what we're seeing in Europe. So, we want to keep vaccinating. We don't want to expose ourselves. We don't want to have spring break like that because
Hmm.
we are one of the top COVID countries as far as COVID goes in the world. And, you know, on the other hand, we're the top 5 vaccinated. And that's where the big questions come up about what's going to pay off, vaccinations, or the fact we've got a very high rate already. And I'm getting tight on time. I can show you some more if you like, or we can wait until next time, whatever you like.
I think we're going to have to start to wind it down a bit now,
Okay.
and then we can save some stuff for next week. But let's give me a couple more minutes. What do you got? Well, one thing I wanted to ask. Now we're a big tourism state here in Michigan,
That's right.
and I haven't heard the governor say anything about any restrictions on tourists. 'Cause how do you restrict that? I mean, they're just going to get in their cars and drive in. But what would you? I know you don't work with the state of Michigan, but what would you recommend?
So what happens? What happens? I have talked to Michigan a little bit about this, and the issue that we have is not about our mandates. Our mandates are basically useless. What matters is how comfortable people feel to come and visit, right? So we can open up the whole state. If people aren't very comfortable about coming to visit because we have a really high a rate of illness, or because none of our people are vaccinated, they're not going to come, right? If you're in Chicago and you're feeling pretty safe, and you have, I don't know, I'll drive up to my cottage in Traverse City, and you look down and you say, gosh, they're only vaccinating at 30% in Traverse City. I don't want to go there. And the place is on fire. I'll go, someplace else. And so that's the challenge we've got. It's not so much about the regulation that we have, it's actually about people's comfort. And the problem we have right now, like I showed you last week, is we have an awful lot of capability to vaccinate up north, and no one's taking advantage of it. Our
Hmm.
lowest rates of vaccination are in the highest tourist areas. And if that
Yeah.
keeps up, we're gonna have problems in those areas, and people aren't going to visit. And that's no matter what we do, because we do want to welcome the tourists. They're a big part of our economy, and they're going to be great for us if we're safe. But if we're not perceived as being a safe place to visit, forget about it.
Yeah, it seems to be politically driven. The rural areas of Michigan, shall we say, are much more Republican, and that whole thing with wearing masks and it's not that big a deal tend to be more politicized than it probably should have been, right?
Oh yeah, the politics are really it's sort of weird. It's as though people it's also the virus really cares whether you're Republican or Democrat. The virus couldn't care less, wants to have a place to have sex, right? It just wants to have a place to have reproduce. And you're that host. If you're Republican or Democrat, it doesn't matter at all. As long as you can, they find, and if you're not vaccinated, they will find you and they will kill you. That's
Uh,
that's
that,
the basic
that
that's
should
the
be the public service announcement that the state puts out. Something along those lines to scare the hell out of people, right? So,
Well, yeah, or hey, we're safe. We're at herd immunity, right? Suppose
right.
Traverse City could say, "Great news. We do all the math, and 75% of our people are vaccinated, and so we've got herd immunity. Come on up, right? That's where you want to be, starting kind of Memorial Day, Memorial Day, and we can get there. We can get there easily. We've got more than enough capability to vaccinate in the rural communities. I'm not sure why you know, somehow people think it's non-Republican to get vaccinated because I mean, if it wasn't for President Trump, we wouldn't be here right now. I'll tell you, he did the right thing by pushing vaccinations. We could have pushed some other things like masking more. We could have pushed some other, but he pushed that. And I was part of those teams. He pushed those teams really hard. He hit numbers that we'd never hit before, and he did it. And it should be a source of pride for the Republicans, not a source of question whether they should take the vaccine. There's just no doubt about
Okay, we're gonna have to
it.
begin to wind
It'll
her
help us open.
down, Fred. What are we gonna be talking about next week?
So next week we can talk about. I wanted to talk a little bit about why the variants haven't hit yet, and because I projected a while ago that we were going to have some variant issues, kind of around April 1st, and it's now March 15th, and we should start to see a little upswing, and all we're seeing is flattening out. So there's some reasons I think that we could still have an upswing, and I want to make sure people are aware of that, because right now people are relaxing. People are in some areas mask use has gone down sixfold,
Hmm.
and that shouldn't happen because we're still in a pretty risky time right now.
Yeah, I wear my N95 when I'm in Myers, and I go first thing in the morning, like about 7 a.m.
Beautiful.
And there's maybe 100 people in there or something, you know.
That's the way to do it. And now that you're vaccinated, you're going to get a little bit safer. But we still, during this transition period, it'll probably last like President Biden said, through the summer. But and then if in the fall we're not getting any bumps and any feedback, we'll turn a corner.
All
But
right, we're going
feel
to
good
leave it
about
at
how
that. We'll talk about the variations of all this fun little COVID disease here next week. And
Yes, we can do that. We'll talk about the variants, and then we can certainly talk about even more than that as we get into how the variants fight each other, how we fight the variants. It could be a fun interactive battle. We'll talk.
Okay, sounds
Traditional four-year students love Lawrence Technological University's thriving campus life, but LTU has always met non-traditional students' needs too. Lawrence Tech offers over 100 degree and certificate programs that can get adult students started or back on track. And most of our classes are conveniently offered evenings at our beautiful Southfield campus or online, so you can balance your social, family, and work life even while you power up your career. Lawrence Tech, where Blue Devils dare.